Pittsburgh Steelers fans, it is time once again for another edition of the Know Your Enemy podcast. My name is Michael Beck, your deputy editor of BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, and we're bringing it to you again. But first and foremost, I have to bring in my co-host, Mr. Geoffrey Benedict. Geoffrey, how you doing tonight, sir?
I am staying alive, Michael. We're hanging in here. We're okay.
That's one way to put it, I guess. Maybe we'll dive into that in the second half and make sure everything's going well over in the Benedict household. We'll check in. But we have a special guest to get to first, so your problems can wait. Mr. Paul Noonan from the Acme Packing Company. Paul, how you doing tonight, sir?
Doing great. Thanks for having me, guys.
It's our pleasure. Now, first thing to kick off the show, I know a ton of Steelers fans have watched it and talked about it a ton online. I'm guessing you've probably seen the clip from Aaron Rodgers doing his weekly hit on the Pat McAfee show, gushing it up over Pittsburgh. I'm curious your thoughts on that. I know he was a little tense with the team in the offseason. I know Steeler fans are already penciling him in the lineup next year. So I'm curious whether or not you saw the spot and what your thoughts on that were.
I actually saw clips from it, but just generally speaking, it's no secret amongst Packer fans that Aaron is almost certainly done at the end of the season. I know there's a few people who suggested he might come back if things go really well. Just don't see it happening. So when he is, buttering up potential suitors in the offseason, frankly, not that big a deal. And I mean, it bothers some people a lot because it's, questioning loyalty right now. But I think we've all come to terms with the fact that this is a business arrangement this year, that there was no way for him to leave this year without wreaking salary cap hell on the team. And that, there are certain places he would like to go and certain situations he'd like to be in. And whenever he inkles anything like that, it's fine. Also, Aaron's just a huge troll. And whenever he goes on any show, Pat's or anybody else's, there's always something there just to annoy people, be it the I'm offended t-shirt or just how he is. He likes to get people riled up, and it's one of Aaron's little weird quirks. And one of the reasons he's not a great guy. He's a good quarterback, but he's not the nicest person in the world.
It's an okay guy.
Yeah.
Is this where does the Aaron Rodgers drama rank on the Brett Favre scale of drama?
I think higher than any of the Brett Favre drama.
Okay. Wow.
Just Brett Favre's was sort of a constant low-level hum, and he retired a few times, then decided to come back a few times, and left the team, I think, legitimately without a good idea of what was going on, but always, I think, was willing to come back, even when they decided to trade him and move on from the team. And Aaron, I think this is like a divorce. This is two entities that are getting along because they need to get along, but don't really like each other. The future's in sight, and everybody will be happier once we get there. So the Favre thing, it ended kind of ugly, but it ended rationally with Aaron as quarterback and with Brett getting to go out on his own terms. This is a fight. This is a pass.
Now, I'm sure we could chat about Packers QB drama pretty much all night because there's been a decent amount of it the past couple decades, really. But getting into this matchup, of course, the Packers, they started slow against the Saints, but have dialed it up. Of course, that last-second victory over the 49ers on Sunday Night Football. Green Bay looks to be heading in the right direction, kind of getting back on that one of the top contenders of the NFC pace. Would you agree with that, or are they kind of looking like the team that people kind of expected from them?
I think so. It's so early. It is hard to tell just what is and what is not a quality win. I mean, they beat Detroit 2 weeks ago, which everybody we assumed is going to beat Detroit, but then Detroit almost knocks off the Ravens the following week, and maybe that win's a little more impressive than we originally thought. They're at least playing hard, even if they don't have talent. And I think beating Kyle Shanahan is always a pretty good sign. It means that you didn't do anything terribly stupid, and you have to play a nice sound game to beat the 49ers, even if they are a little bit undermanned. So I do like the way they're trending, and the Packers have made some key changes on the defense that seem to really be rounding them into a halfway decent form for the first time in a while. So I really like how that's picking up. Offense looks good. I mean, we don't have a ton of concern about any Aaron-led offense. It'll be at least okay. And yeah, they look like they're kind of firing on all cylinders now. It's good.
How important is this game now to the Packers? Just for season outlook, but also for the fans and knowing, where does this team stand? How important is a win at home against Pittsburgh?
I'll be perfectly honest. I'm not really sure that this one is that important in the grand scheme of things. Just it's out of conference, and I think it's going to be hard to get a real good judgment out of how Pittsburgh is at this point too. I mean, one of the things that's happened with every Packer opponent so far is they've all been hurt a lot. Even though the Saints won, the Saints were missing a ton of players in that game. Detroit is just not an NFL team really. And the 49ers were missing a ton of guys too. And now I know my understanding is that the Steelers are missing a ton of key personnel on offense and defense. And I think it makes it hard to gauge how quality that game is going to be. So I'm not really sure. I mean, you always got to win every game. There's not that many football games during a season. They're all important. But, if the Packers got caught looking past this one a little bit and like latest stinker, it wouldn't surprise me that much. They've been prone to that in the past. Especially on out-of-conference games where they're not familiar with the opponent.
So kind of like the Steelers of the NFC. I think we can all appreciate losing to lesser opponents. Okay, just had a cold chill run down my spine thinking about that. But getting back on topic here, in this game specifically, I don't expect you to watch too much Steelers tape, but obviously last week, especially, the Steelers offense was pretty non-existent. It was kind of shut down to basically check downs to Najee Harris or kind of wide receiver swing passes or screens. Is the vibe in kind of Green Bay or really at the website that this is a game that's kind of ripe for the picking and a Steelers team that can be kind of taken down?
I do think that we think the Packers should win this game, that the Steelers look vulnerable. Frankly, it's a good time to get them. You guys could probably update me on this more than anybody, but especially if Watt and Highsmith are going to miss the game. And then that's just a situation where they should be able to score more or less at will. And I think if you get really ahead of Ben Roethlisberger and have to force him to push the ball down the field, then you're just in good shape. And I think that's kind of how we see the game playing out to a large extent. So that's kind of it. Now, if they get behind, the Packers have some defensive issues that can be exploited. So it's not like a sure thing, but I feel like we're catching the Steelers at a good time here, and it's probably better now than later in the season.
Now, you can force Ben Roethlisberger to throw the ball in the middle of the field, but he's not going to do it. He's still just going to throw the checkdowns. We saw that last week. Geoffrey, go ahead with your question.
You were talking about TJ Watt. I think Michael and I were actually just talking right before you came on about like what would it take for TJ Watt to miss this game when he was kind of questionable and they kind of erred on the side of caution last week. And we were talking like it's not guaranteed he will ever get a shot to play in Green Bay again. Right. So we think he's going to play. How much does, if TJ Watt plays or not plays, in your opinion, just from an outside team's perspective, affect your expectation of how this game goes? So
normally I don't think that one defensive player matters that much. But in this case, I think it matters kind of a lot. The Packers have a pretty distinct vulnerability on defense where Aaron Rodgers has struggled, which is playing a two-deep safety look and generating a pass rush without having to blitz much. If you take a guy out of the secondary to blitz, he can usually exploit the missing area. If you can avoid doing that, Aaron Rodgers actually has trouble being patient, and he often gets himself into trouble against that look. And teams have started to pick up on this. It's one of the reasons the Saints actually won in week one is even though they were undermanned, they were able to keep that look the whole game and rely on Lattimore to shut down Davante Adams and force Rodgers to basically dink and dunk down the field. And he frankly just couldn't do it. If the Steelers can generate that kind of pass rush, they can mimic that. And I think they can be effective doing that if they do have especially Watt out there who really kind of fixes that problem all by himself if he's, 80% or so. And so I think that's a huge factor. If he's not out there and the Steelers are forced to create pressure in more creative ways, it's just hard to stop the Packers. If you don't, a lot of teams have had success doing so. And I think that they have the horses to do it. I mean, they were the number one defense in the league last year, and I know they've been hurt and not the number one defense in the league this year, but the talent's still there. It's just a matter of getting it together and having a solid plan to deal with Green Bay.
Now, flipping things over to the other side of the ball here, the Steelers, of course, last year had the worst rushing attack in football. This year, somehow, it's seemingly worse. Are the Steelers, will they be able to find any bubbles anywhere against this Green Bay rush defense, or is this one that we're in for another day of Najee Harris just getting beat up on the last scrimmage?
This one's tricky, and I think we're still kind of dealing with small sample size here. But the Packers have been pretty good against the run, generally speaking. Now, Alvin Kamara had a good game week 1. I think we are all kind of throwing that game out, and maybe we shouldn't because, it's only a sample of 3 and throwing one out's not good. But it looks like they've kind of figured out their defensive front a little bit. Now, they're really light up front. On the defensive line, it's kind of Kenny Clark and nothing else. But they've done a really nice job of moving him around and getting him out on the edge a little bit more, which has helped on the run and the pass. And the Packers have had just the worst inside linebacking core in the league for I don't even know how long to say anymore, 25 years, way more than a decade. They signed Devondre Campbell in the offseason, who, as far as I'm concerned, is just a journeyman who's never really been that good. He's been outstanding so far and really helped up their run defense. That might go away, might just be having a couple good games, but he's legitimately been great. His PFF grade ranks him 10th among linebackers, and he's really helped shut down the run. So it actually could be a little tricky, and I know it's not like the Pittsburgh offensive line is going to throw its weight around that much either. So I think this is one where it still might be a little trouble to run the ball on them.
Okay, you brought up the inside linebackers against the run. How are the Packers against receiving backs coming out of the backfield and receiving and also covering tight ends?
Not great, kind of bad. The problem that they have specifically is just they're not deep in the secondary, and their linebackers are not great in coverage. So if you can get a tight end matched up on any linebacker, you'll probably have success. The 49ers had great success with George Kittle last week. He basically kept them in the game single-handedly by exploiting linebackers. It's a weakness for sure. They've had a little more success with running backs out of the backfield, which is actually kind of surprising, given Kamara was one of them. They're not good against them. They're best against outside receivers. That's their strength. Gerald Alexander is outstanding. He's one of the best corners in the league, and it looks like Eric Stokes is at least going to be average, which is all we've been asking. Opposite Jair for all this time. It looks like we finally have that, so that's good. But everything else is kind of a mess. The slot corner position, the starter is usually Chandon Sullivan, and he takes running backs and slot receivers. He's okay. He's having kind of a down year. They've been experimenting with putting Kevin King there, who is their former outside corner that lost his job to Stokes recently. He actually is in the concussion protocol might not play. Packers fans are torn on whether they want him to play. The team loves Kevin King, but nobody else loves Kevin King except opposing receivers. They love Kevin King. But they've been playing him in the slot. Kevin King is 6'4", has no wiggle in him anymore, and isn't particularly fast nor a good tackler. And I don't know why they think he can be a slot corner, but if he does play in the slot, you can throw to Najee all game, and he'll have a good 150, 160 yards, no problem.
Now, one of the things that the Steelers offense keeps trying to dial up, but it has not quite been successful, and it's mostly been kind of Ben's fault in a way. It's deep shots down the sideline, between the numbers and the sideline. Have the Packers been giving anything up in those kind of areas of the field, or is this just going to be another one of those Steelers fans going to bang our heads against the drywall as we see another ball just sail right over everyone's heads?
They're really tough to target deep. It is not the way to attack the Packers. It is a strength of theirs. Gerald Alexander is great on going back on the ball. He's very hard to get separation on. I would urge you to go check out his interception from last week, where he just was a missile crossing the field, completely out of the view of Jimmy Garoppolo, and it wasn't even a bad throw. Just he broke on it so quickly from so far away. If Ben hangs any up there, he'll have the same thing happen to him this week. And on the other side, Eric Stokes is a rookie. He is prone to getting beat, but he's one of the fastest players in the league and has shown great recovery speed. So he's also tough to target, and often guys will look open on him going deep when they're really not. The safeties are both also adept at taking away the deep ball. Adrian Amos is a good stable presence back there, and he'll get anything that goes errant up in the air. And Darnell Savage is just a missile. He's also undisciplined, but if he sees a ball, he'll nag it. It's not a good game. The Packers defense is not a good defense to attack if your quarterback doesn't have a rifle. And Ben 6-7 years ago would have been perfectly fine against this defense. This will be a little trickier for him.
Yeah, it's not the news we were hoping to hear there. Okay. One of my favorite things about this game is Aaron Rodgers and Ben Roethlisberger have not played since the Super Bowl. They have not played each other since the Super Bowl, and that's crazy to me. What do you and like to me also, I'm sorry, but neither of them have been back.
Yep.
Like we I think everyone left that 2010 Super Bowl thinking like, you know what? These are teams that could face each other again. Like both these teams are coming back. They're coming back to conference championship games. They're coming back, and neither of them have made it back. How do you think that affects the legacy of those two quarterbacks? And do you think they're at all tied together kind of because of that kind of story?
So I'm not sure they are. They probably should be a little bit more. Mostly because the games they played have been basically all classics to some extent. Haven't been that much of them, but and they are separated just by time too, not having played each other since. I was at the last Steelers Packers game, I think, where Matt Flynn was the Packers quarterback for that game. So, but they probably should be tied together a little more. They're very close in terms of the classes that they were in. I mean, they're very similar age-wise and time in the league. And yeah, they kind of do have that legacy of, sort of the next tier of teams to sort of dominate the league after the Patriots and a few others. So it makes a lot of sense to kind of speak of them in the same breath together. And I do think it hurts them. I mean, Ben's got two, so that helps a lot too. I think Aaron's hurt a little bit more by only having the one. I think everybody expected him to definitely get another one in 2011 when they had the best offense in the league. And it's genuinely surprising they haven't been back. And I mean, not even getting back to one is, I think, even more surprising than not winning one. I think people thought the Packers would be there perennially for many, many, many years, and just didn't happen. And there's no Patriots in the NFC to knock them off. They've also had a much more random assortment of kind of garbage knocking them off, like Colin Kaepernick 49ers and just running into sort of
Matt Ryan
one-off teams. Yeah, it's
Dallas.
it's not a great.
Oh no, I guess they lost that one. Yeah.
Couple Seahawks just complete meltdowns, especially. So that's sort of the Packard legacy is crushing defeats at the hands of other teams that didn't really turn out to be juggernauts.
Yeah, that definitely is pretty interesting. Now, going back to the Sunday night game, one thing that kind of occurred to me watching the Packers march the ball down the field, anytime they were in a big spot and Aaron Rodgers needed a play, he was turning to Davante Adams over and like that was the guy. First and second down, you could have some Aaron Jones sprinkled in there. Third down, just get ready for Davante Adams. He's definitely kind of that big target for Rodgers. Now, are there other guys that we need to be worried about, or is this the guy that we need to just try to double team and bracket on those possession downs and try to stuff Davante Adams?
A good way to beat them is to bracket Davante Adams and take him away. But there are other guys to worry about. It's just a matter of getting Aaron to actually look their way once in a while. One big thing for the Packers is Marquez Valdes-Scantling does have a bum hamstring, and I think is questionable for this game. I think he's going to go, but it's up in the air, and he's a speed guy, so leg injuries kind of sap him of his one really big skill. And he's their number 2 receiver. He is their really only deep threat. But you still have to be careful with a couple guys, even if he's not around. So the one that nobody knows about that is worth paying attention to is actually Alan Lazard, who is the Packers' ostensible number 3 receiver, but he doesn't play that much because they run sort of the Shanahan offense. It's a lot of 12 personnel and heavy people. So the number 3 receiver doesn't get on the field that much. But Alan Lazard's a monster. He is one of the best blocking receivers in the league. When he's in, he functions sort of as another tight end. If you go ever look at his DVOA stats on Football Outsiders, he's actually one of the most efficient receivers in football for the tenure of his career. He just doesn't get that many targets. And he's definitely a good chemistry, like glue guy, gets the team rallied. Last week, the Packers gave up a late touchdown in the first half to the 49ers after they gave up a long kickoff return. They do that a lot. Alan Lazard put himself on special teams for the rest of the game and just mopped up kick returners for the rest of the game. That's what he does. He's like a fullback wide receiver. And if you leave him open, he'll actually beat you pretty bad. Last year, against the Saints, he had like 150 yards receiving. And he jumps up and does that when MVS is hurt. They also signed Randall Cobb back in the offseason to make Aaron Rodgers happy. And even though he's ancient, he's actually been pretty good. So there are some other weapons there that he's comfortable going to, especially when he's missing his best guys. Also worth noting, Robert Tonyan's a pretty good tight end. He was number 1 in DVOA for tight ends last year, and never, ever, ever drops the ball. He's dropped 2 in his career, 1 this year and 1 his rookie year, and that's all. He has some of the best hands in the league.
For Steeler fans, I'll throw out there that Alan Lazard is Chase Claypool sized.
He is. He's a Giants man.
Freaking huge. Okay, outside of that, Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones has been kind of this guy that in fantasy, he's like a superstar, but the NFL never really. They're always like, Aaron Jones, he's a running back. He runs. How good and how important is Aaron Jones to the Packers offense?
He's really good. He's a top 5 back in the league, and he secretly has been his entire career. Even when he was an unheralded rookie, on a per play basis, he was one of the best backs in the league and has continued to be that. So he is really rounded into form as a receiver too. He catches a nice ball. In the last game, I guess it was I think it was the Detroit game. He had like 3 receiving touchdowns, and he is a huge weapon in the screen game, as well as on the ground. He's actually had a little bit of a down year so far. He had real trouble against the Saints, but he's been rallying back the last couple of weeks. And I think to the extent he struggled, it's because they have been missing some people on the offensive line. David Bakhtiari tore his ACL last year, and he won't be back for at least half the season here. And his backup is Elton Jenkins, who is almost as good as he is, frankly. And he is still injured, and I think he might be back for this game, but I won't be surprised if they hold him out. So their offensive line's all rookies, and so they've struggled in run blocking a little bit, and the running game suffered for it. But Aaron's still looked his old self and been perfectly fine. They can still grind it out on the ground when they need to.
I just want to point out that struggling early in the season, he still has 5 touchdowns.
He does.
In 3 games. Okay, Michael.
Oh, 5 touchdowns in 3 games. That sounds like a pipe dream. Anywho, talking about a couple players that don't really get too much love now for Green Bay, and we probably won't see them on the field, but I do want to ask about them. Jordan Love and A.J. Dillon, of course, the first 2 picks of 2 drafts ago now. Do they make any impact on this team? Are you kind of expecting them to make some sort of a jump in the future? What's kind of the deal with the backup QB and now the number 2 running back?
So I'm not a big Jordan Love fan, and I do a lot of analytics for Acme Packing Company, and I've got just thresholds for my college quarterbacks that I like them to hit if they're going to project well in the NFL. Jordan Love didn't hit any of them. He was very inaccurate. Even if you ignore his last season where he led the college football in interceptions, his junior year is like his good season, what people refer to as his good season. And it was fine, but he still was not a very accurate passer. It was mostly hitting a lot of shots down the field, a lot of big plays. And that can be driven by receivers just as much as quarterbacks. It's often deceptive when you're looking at quarterback prospects. Like Mitch Trubisky was very similar that way, if you want to comp. You could maybe squint and say Patrick Mahomes was that way too, but not really. No, he wasn't. So with Jordan Love, you're really looking at a developmental guy. He has great physical tools. He had the strongest arm in that draft. He's very fast, but those guys usually don't work out. People say, well, Josh Allen worked out, but yes, he's the only guy who's worked out like in the last couple decades that is that profile. So not a fan of Jordan Love. Don't like that he's caused all this controversy. I like picking quarterbacks. I think it's a good idea basically every draft, but not the one I would have gone with. I think he is. They're going to try him. He's looked okay in preseason. He's going to be Aaron's replacement, I think, unless they know something they're not letting on. But it's not my favorite. A.J. Dillon, also not my favorite. I also am not a fan of picking running backs high. Aaron Jones was a 5th round pick. Like the lesson on Aaron Jones is pick Aaron Jones in the 5th and don't go up to the 2nd to get guys. And A.J. Dillon's really limited for what they like to do on offense. He's not a good receiving threat. I know he's like shaped like a shorter Derrick Henry. He's a big, huge power guy. He has great spark and like great speed for his weight. And that's all fine, but he really hasn't impressed that much. He had 1 good game last year. He's been kind of bad this year. And going back to the Aaron Jones, they drafted Kylan Hill in the 7th round this year, and he's looked better than, well, frankly, both of them, but definitely A.J. Dillon. He's their kick returner right now, first good one they've had in a while, and a polished receiver out of the backfield. So I'm not sure if A.J. Dillon's going to be around that long unless he starts to actually show up a little bit more on tape.
Okay. You mentioned earlier the rookies on the offensive line. One specifically I want to ask you about is one Steeler fans, and Michael and I talked about a decent bit before the draft. Center Josh Myers, how has he been for the Packers so far this season?
Well, some of the best news you can get about your center is that no announcers ever talk about them. And that's kind of been Josh Myers this year. He's been outstanding. He's been one of, if not their best offensive linemen. He's one of the highest graded centers in the league and essentially has made no mistakes. He's kind of a quiet guy. He's a great run blocker. He hasn't like stepped on Aaron's feet or anything. But I think that they have a winner here. But essentially, everybody's happy with the Myers pick. He was basically sometimes in camp you can just tell when guys are going to make it when they're immediately impressive. And I think everybody in the Packer organization immediately could see, yep, there's our starter, and they really protected him like a veteran. Didn't push him to get a lot of reps. Knew he was going to start, and he's impressed every minute since. He appears to be outstanding and a good replacement for Corey Linsley. So they did well there.
Imagine having a good starting rookie center.
The Packers are really so they struggle in some areas. They're not good at drafting receivers and haven't been since basically the Ron Wolf days. Well, Ted Thompson used to be good, but they are phenomenal at getting offensive linemen. It really just seems like everyone they pick is at least average, and they just find like guys in the 5th and 6th routinely and plug them in, and they're just perfectly fine. It happens almost every year. It's definitely their wheelhouse in the draft. So that's the best part of the team almost every year.
Well, I guess the Steelers kind of got the receivers side of things down, but start hitting on some other positions here and pretty quick. But anywho, talking about Aaron Rodgers himself again, where do you kind of foresee him trying to pick apart the Steelers defense, and where's he going to look to go with the ball?
It really does depend on how they decide to defend him, and I will say Aaron does target Davante Adams to a fault sometimes. So he will go to that well until it stops working. And once it stops working, that's when he kind of falls into what I would say is actually the good Packer offense, the play action, the mesh routes, and things like that, things to generate open looks from other guys. But that's really kind of how it works. Is they'll start with a lot of Devontae over and over and over again, mixing a few trick plays. And if that starts to be stymied a little bit, they'll really hit the deep middle of the field with mesh over and over and over again until that stops working. And then they'll start using motion and play action after that if that stops working. So they're really sort of an advanced analytics team to a large extent. They use a ton of pre-snap motion. They use a ton of play action as long as Devontae is not being used overly much. When they do get kind of in that funk, the one thing to watch for if their offense is struggling is how much he's in shotgun. If he's in shotgun like every single snap, it means that they've gotten away from their offense, that they've stopped using a lot of the motion and things that work and play action and things that work. And Aaron's decided he and Devontae are going to hero ball this thing. And that's when they do get into trouble. So if they're playing within the offense, though, they're really hard to stop. And it is a lot of deception and open looks in the middle of the field.
That sounds so much like the Steelers. Like it really does. It's like when Ben Roethlisberger just goes into shotgun and starts flipping the ball to Deontay Johnson all day. And, and he gets a ton of catches and they don't move the ball much. I'm going to go a complete 180 for my last question here. I was born and raised in Michigan. I'm a big Michigan fan. How is Rashawn Gary doing for the Green Bay Packers?
He's, I would say, okay. Which is fine because when he was drafted as a raw developmental prospect. Like doing that, but they did. I thought he was going to bust out because he didn't show up on the stat sheet enough at Michigan for my taste. For a guy who is as athletic as he is, I think he should have popped a little more. Like I heard all the excuses that he was used as a decoy to free up Winovich and other things like that. But like you should just overwhelm some Rutgers guys and have like a 4-sack game every now and then. So that was always worrisome with him. He has started to really come on a little bit more though. He puts that speed to get. He's not polished yet, but he will get to the quarterback a couple times a game. And so if he's okay, if he turns into a really good pass rusher like next year, I won't be that surprised. if he's kind of averagey for the rest of his career, I won't be that surprised either. He's been getting a lot of time too because Zadarius Smith has a bad back and has missed all of the games so far this year, and that is the spot that Gary takes.
So we now have hit the 30-minute mark. Before we let you go, Paul, one last question for you. Who is going to win this game on Sunday, and what's the final score? And it's okay to pick your own guys. You don't have to feel intimidated being on our show out here in Pittsburgh.
Well, I will pick my own guys. I think I wish everybody was completely healthy. I think it would be a much better game in that scenario. But I do think the Steelers have enough injuries that they'll be dinged enough that the Packers will be able to take advantage. But I don't think it'll be a blowout or anything like that. I'll go like 28-24 Packers, something along those lines.
Oh, three Steelers touchdowns. After the start we've had, I'd be all for that. But
24
I guess
points would be beautiful.
Yeah, I guess the very last thing, Paul, is there anything you want to plug?
Yeah. So if you happen to also be a Packer fan for some odd reason, I host the podcast Reporting as Eligible over on the Acme Packing Company podcast network. And if you happen to be a Milwaukee Brewer fan, which also would be weird, but hey, could happen. I host a Brewer podcast as well called Milwaukee's Tailgate Podcast. So go check those out.
Awesome. Good stuff. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate all your time you gave to us tonight.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Alrighty. So Steelers fans, if you're watching on YouTube and Facebook, just hang tight. We're going to jump into our quick little break here. If you are watching on any, or listening, I should say, on any podcasting platform, just click over to part 2 now, and we will get things going with the second half of our show. So we'll see you when we get there.
All right. I will check out. Thanks, guys.
See you, Paul. Alrighty, Pittsburgh Steelers fans. It is time for the second half of our show tonight. Once again, my name is Michael Beck, joined by one Mr. Geoffrey Benedict, as always. It's time to break down the Steelers half of the show here. Geoffrey, I know a little bit of negativity sprinkled throughout that first half of the show. If it wasn't that subtle, I'm not too keen on the Steelers' start to the season. But what are your kind of overall thoughts on the Steelers to this point? And is it as doom and gloom as heck I may think it could be?
My take is the defense is good if it's healthy, and the offense is awful.
Is it fixable?
Is it fixable? Yes. My as you well know, my mantra going into this season has been, can the offensive line get going before Ben Roethlisberger gets like too banged up to be effective? And I think we may have already crossed that point. And if we have crossed that point, then like the offense is kind of screwed. Like we're kind of doomed here on offense, and it's just, can the defense salvage the season enough to make it like worth it, or should we just, like, I know I'm with most Steelers on this, most Steelers fans on this precipice of should we actually tank, which is pointless because the Steelers won't do it. So yeah, it's just whether we pull off enough wins to ruin our draft placement or pull off enough wins to actually have this be viewed as a semi-successful season, to me at this point, because I think we're seeing Ben is already getting too banged up, and he's kind of seeing ghosts, and the offensive line is they played their best game this last week against the Bengals, and it was still bad. It was still legitimately bad offensive line play, but it was their best game yet.
That's reassuring, I think.
No, really, Michael, like what's your thoughts on the offensive line this past week?
It was bad. Yeah, it was pretty much as bad as it could be for the NFL. There's no running holes. Ben's getting his head caved in. It's bad. And somehow there's people out there telling you that will tell you it isn't. Spit in their eye. If someone tells you this Steelers offensive line isn't bad, they do not know what the heck they're talking about. And I think Geoffrey agrees that that's an appropriate punishment.
Oh, that's our Canadian. That's our polite Canadian for you right there. Right there. That's as polite as he can get about this.
Give him the old Trey Turner.
Why don't you tell him how you really feel, Michael Beck?
I'm going to toss him in a snowbank and get in a hockey fight. That's what I'm going to do. Now, We should probably spend some time on Ben Roethlisberger. And here, let's start things off with a positive twist too. On this game, he is 213 yards away from Dan Marino for 6th all-time passing yardage. He's 1 touchdown pass away from 400 in his career. I expect both those things to happen in this game. I know 1 touchdown pass might seem like a lot considering the state of the offense, but I genuinely think that's those are both things that are going to come off the board this weekend. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think those are both really, really well within reach. Matt Canada can orchestrate. I know people are in like fire everyone, like let's go hang everyone involved in the Steelers offense right now, but Matt Canada actually has shown he is capable of drawing up a few plays a game to account for the fact that the offensive line can't block and his quarterback can't throw it to the middle of the field, and he's got receivers that drop passes. Like, he's still being able to draw up a few plays a game where you look at it and you're like, wow, that's awesome. And then you look at it again and you're like, okay, there's 5 offensive linemen and they managed to block 3 people and the play still worked. You know, they're like, that's the kind of stuff he can draw up. So yeah, I think he's going to draw up and he's going to have a play to get Ben that touchdown pass. And I mean, 200 some yards, that's nothing in the modern NFL. If you can't throw for 200 and whatever yards, then oh my goodness.
Well, especially if Ben manages to throw the ball 58 times again like he did last week. One of our keys this season. Ben Roethlisberger not doing that, and he did it. I don't really anticipate them kind of getting away from what the offense is right now, especially overnight. Now, kind of on the same mark as those records we just talked about, once Ben takes them, do you think the Steelers become a little bit more likely if Ben struggles for game in and game out to say, well, maybe we should audition our other quarterbacks here and just try to get a jump on this spot? Or is this just Ben's ship to burn down in the fire in a Viking funeral? One way to put it.
Oh, absolutely. The second, like this is Ben's ship, and it's gonna go down with him in it. And honestly, you know, if you think either of your other quarterbacks have a chance of being your future guy, you know, don't put him out there with this offensive line. This offensive line would get Mason Rudolph absolutely destroyed.
There's no pocket presence.
Yeah, he would be absolutely ruined. And Dwayne Haskins, you've got this offense. You've had all these people practice a Ben Roethlisberger offense, an offense designed for Ben Roethlisberger. Dwayne Haskins can't run that. If you're asking Dwayne Haskins to run that, you're gonna Washington the situation. Like, you're gonna just put him in a situation where he is set up to fail, and then watch him fail. That's what you're gonna do. So to me, this ship is Ben Roethlisberger's ship, and it's going to go down that way. Now, I would like to actually say some positive things about Ben Roethlisberger here, because Ben Roethlisberger came back, and he didn't just come back. He has put in work to learn an offense that is counter to what we saw from him last season. Last season, we saw Ben Roethlisberger who couldn't do play action. We saw Ben Roethlisberger who was terrible at RPOs. We saw Ben Roethlisberger that didn't want to run out, that wanted to get rid of the ball super quick, that wasn't willing to do rollouts and move around much. He was stationary. And we're seeing this season a Ben Roethlisberger who is using play action. I mean, they're still towards the bottom, but he's doing it, right? And he's actually completing some passes out of play action. His RPOs are much better, and he's moving around. And for goodness sakes, he's trying to create plays, and he's taking hits to do them. Like, give Ben Roethlisberger credit on the effort side, because he's put in the work that I think last year a lot of people were looking at him saying maybe he's just not willing to do this. You know, maybe he's got too much of an ego to do this stuff. I think he has answered that. He is willing to do it. The question is, at 39 years old, is he able to do it anymore?
Now, if this sample size, those first 3 games, is what we get for a 17-game season, would you say, well, I think I already know your answer, but is that the end of the Ben Roethlisberger era? Is it over for him if this is what we get for a season's worth of games?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. this is something else that needs to be pointed out. People are like the Steelers. You have a lot of people saying, "Oh, the Steelers should have just moved on from Ben. Why'd they even bring him back?" The Steelers were absolutely screwed, and I'm saying that using as polite language as I can for the reality of the situation. Ben Roethlisberger saved them $15 million against the salary cap. I think his cap hit this year is under 26 million. It was 41. He saved them $15 million against the salary cap. So if you look at the team as it is right now and say, okay, what are they if Ben Roethlisberger doesn't come back? First off, can you re-sign TJ Watt? Probably not, which means he's hitting free agency. And that's a nightmare. Can you keep, like, you look at situations like even being conservative on what they would have lost. You're losing Eric Ebron. Straight off the bat, your number 2 tight end is consistently Zach Gentry, and Kevin Rader is on the roster. Yeah, Eric Ebron drops passes, but he also creates some threat in the passing game. You know, you're not only, Freiermuth at that point, but also here's the big one to me, and I think you can support me on this one. If you do not keep Ben Roethlisberger, if he doesn't save them that money, if they cut him, you have to extend Joe Hayden. Absolutely have to. And we all know from what happened right before the season, Joe Hayden wants more money than he's worth. He wanted an extension for more money than he's worth. And if you're the Steelers and Ben Roethlisberger isn't your quarterback and you're not saving that $15 million, you're paying it in dead cap, then Joe Hayden is someone you have to re-sign no matter what, really. And you pretty much have to pay him what you have to pay him to get him to sign. And then you're you're in a bad situation next year. So for me, like, hey, people, they had to keep Ben Roethlisberger. They had to. This is likely his final season. And frankly, be glad that he came back and gave up $5 million, because he could have been like, no, I'm not giving that up. You can pay me what you sign, the contract you signed for me, or you can cut me and be completely screwed.
Yeah, no kidding. And on the same kind of vein as that, I've seen a lot of people even in the chat tonight bringing up old Devlin Duck Hodges' name. I do want to throw out there that he is the third string quarterback on the worst team in the Canadian Football League. So maybe just keep that in the back of your mind if that's the guy you want brought in.
He's the third string. They are the worst team in the Canadian Football League because he's the third string quarterback. That's why. Right. Yes. That's why.
Go Red Blacks.
Detroit Lions should have traded for Duck Hodges instead of Jared Goff.
Who? That's a spicy take. That no, it's not. I tried.
I love Devlin Hodges. I'm glad he's somewhere where there's good duck hunting. I love that guy. He's a great story. He doesn't have to be a good quarterback. He is a he's not even a great story. He is an amazing story. He won his first 3 games. Like, he was a rookie. He had no idea what he was doing in an NFL offense. He didn't and Tomlin obviously, Tomlin admitted, we can't try to coach this guy because the minute we try to coach him, he's going to lose confidence because he's going to realize all the stuff he doesn't know and can't do. So we're just not even coaching him. We're just going to throw him out there because there's no way we can fix this. I loved his story and that he won 3 games. It's absolutely insane, and I will forever be a Devlin Hodges fan.
Yeah, that's an A1 story if you ever heard one. FCS to starting quarterback of the Pittsburgh Steelers. A year removed? Well, I guess that was 2019, but 2 years removed from an AFC title trip. Yeah, that's pretty wild, and one that will go down in Steelers lore forever. But I guess to kind of get back on track, and we can flip things to the other side of the ball, and one guy that I know a lot of Steelers fans are starting to get at his neck for not being more of a playmaker. That's Devin Bush. Not exactly lighting up the stat sheet. What do you make of the Steelers' now third-year linebacker and someone who's definitely a difference maker before he tore his ACL last year? Is he still that same guy? Is this someone we need to be concerned about now, or is this all kind of people making a bigger situation of what it really is?
I want to say this very clearly. Right now, Devin Bush is nowhere close to the player he was at the start of 2020. At the start of 2020, Devin Bush was so key to this defense. And not just like, oh, they'd stink without him. But if you look at what Vince Williams and Mike Hilton were doing on that defense, the numbers they were putting up, the sacks, the pressures, the blitzes we were throwing, Devin Bush was the coverage side of that. He was making up for the fact that we had holes in the defense, but they weren't holes because Devin Bush could cover so much territory. He's not that guy right now. And the hard thing is he started to look like he was getting back to that guy, and then he injured his groin. So your question is now, is he going to get back there? Right? And that I can't answer. But right now, yeah, when you're not, I still don't think he's fully recovered from that ACL. I don't think that's 100%. And you have a groin injury slowing you down. He's not that guy. He is right now, I would put him in the solid starter category. Like, he deserves to be a starter on this team, but he's solid. The question is, can he get back to what he was? Because in 2019, he was a playmaker. In 2020, he was the guy letting everyone else make plays and covering for them. He was an incredible player in 2020. For those games, he was active. And if he can ever get back there, I'm talking like Ryan Shazier at his peak. Devin Bush was there to start season 2. Devin Bush was phenomenal. The question is, can he be that guy again? And I don't have an answer because we saw Lamar Woodley have a leg injury and then a groin injury, and then things just kind of deteriorated from there. And he went from being like the guy who was just taking over for James Harrison as the most dominant edge rusher on the team to a guy who is just a journeyman, right? He's a kind of a starter, but he's not going to do much for you. Hopefully Devin Bush gets back. That's all I can say, because right now he is not that guy.
So speaking of the ACL guys, and Zach Banner today, the news kind of breaks that his clock has been activated. He was on the practice field, so he has 21 days to appear in a game, be on the active roster before he would be shut down for the entire season because of that injury reserve return designation that he was given when the season first started. What do you kind of anticipate for whenever Zach Banner makes his return, and will he be able to fix or alleviate some of these issues the Steelers offensive line's had?
The minute Zach Banner is capable of stepping on the football field, health-wise, he will be the Steelers' best tackle. That is my prediction there. I don't think that's a hot take. Like, Dan Moore Jr. shows so much potential, but potential isn't right now. Chukwuma Okorafor, man, in the right circumstances in the right situations, he's good. Give the guy credit. He did a monster job against Myles Garrett last season, but game in, game out, he's not that guy. Chukwuma Okorafor is a great guy to have as your swing tackle, not as a starter. I don't know how good Banner's going to be, but I can tell you he's going to be the best tackle on this team the minute he steps on the field. That's not great praise. That's just, he's going to be okay to good, somewhere in that range. So, yeah, hopefully he's back, because my goodness, some of the plays we've seen from Dan Moore Jr. And Chukwuma Okorafor these last few weeks are awful.
So slide Zach Banner into that right tackle spot. What is going on the left side? Considering everyone, let's just assume everyone is healthy. Who is their Steelers starting left tackle?
I'm going Dan Moore Jr. Okorafor was not good on the left side. I didn't like him there. And frankly, I think Dan Moore Jr. is actually outplaying him right now. Which is sad. Chukwuma Okorafor is worse this year than he was last year. I think the veterans, and this is something I want to get to, is also with Kevin Dodson, right? It's not just Chooks, it's Kevin Dodson too. He's not the same dude he was last year. But both of these guys, we got to sit there and look at the people around them. That line had Alejandro Villanueva, Marquise Pouncey, and David DeCastro, who, no matter how healthy or how good they still were at their advanced ages, they were leaders. They went from being like the new young guys on the block with these leaders around them to being the veterans in one season. Kevin Dodson is a second season lineman who wasn't a starter last year, and he is kind of one of the veteran leaders on this line. That's crazy, and he was so good last year when Marquise Pouncey was playing. Kevin Dodson was an absolute monster when he was playing next to Marquise Pouncey. And I think people don't realize how big of a deal it is when you lose that guy and you don't have your mentor. This is like, I'm going to get nerdy on you here, but this is like Star Wars, where like they show up at the Death Star and Obi-Wan doesn't come with Luke Skywalker. Like he just doesn't go with him. Like that's where Kevin Dodson is. Kevin Dodson's like, yeah, get on the ship, Luke Skywalker, and Obi-Wan's just going to stay. He's done. He's retired. Kevin Dodson is that guy, and Chukwuma Okorafor is that guy too right now. So I think the loss of veteran leadership is really hurting this offensive line, and we're going to have to see them figure out who's in charge of this line, who knows what they're doing, who can lead, and that might not happen this year.
Nerd.
Yeah, I showed my true colors there.
That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. But kind of refocusing on Sunday's game here, I think one of the big things that we definitely need to talk about is how the Pittsburgh Steelers are going to slow down Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams and Aaron Jones. What do you kind of anticipate from the defense specifically to try to limit what Aaron Rodgers can do with all his weapons?
Well, I think this is the right time to bring in like our entire pregame show, our entire pre-show conversation. Which is this game is about one player. Like really, in all honesty, as bad as the offense is and as bad as the defense has been since he's been out, this game is about one player. And this game is about a player who is coming home to play football in his home state, who hasn't played the last couple of games. And I want to, for the people listening, one of the questions I asked Michael before this was if the trainers try to tell TJ Watt he can't play in Wisconsin, in Green Bay, and what realistically could be his only shot to play at home in his entire career, like, would he fight the team doctor to get into this game? I would say yes. Like, I'm going that, like, TJ Watt would be like, dude, seriously, you're going to sign this and you're going to let me play. I don't care what you have to inject painkillers, legal, obviously legal, painkillers, doctor prescribed here. Put it in my system, let me get out there. This game is about Trent Jordan Watt. This game is about, can one guy turn around the entire course of a season for this team? Yeah. It's all about him. If he is pass rushing, like our guest said, if we have a 4-man pass rush, we haven't had that. We had that with TJ Watt. We haven't had it without him. Then we can face Aaron Rodgers. We can frustrate him. We can do some things. TJ Watt's going to know that. He's watched film. He can break down film. Keith Butler, TJ Watt, they can break down film at least as good as you and I and our guest can. They're going to sit there and know, dude, if you can get to Aaron Rodgers, we can win this game. If no one gets to Aaron Rodgers, yeah, it's another, like, we're going to lose worse than we lost to Joe Burrow. And that's really it for me, is like, how do you slow him down? TJ Watt needs to be an absolute monster in this game. That's it. That's the bottom line for me.
Yeah, and honestly, if TJ Watt doesn't play, I feel like you just start chalking it up as an L. His status for this game really means a lot. Having no pass rush on Aaron Rodgers, he's just going to sit back and pick us apart. And really, that's just the way I see it. I can't see it unfolding any other way if TJ's not in the game.
Plus, really, if you want to win, if you're TJ Watt and you wanted to win a Defensive Player of the Year award, come in and win this game. Like, you come in and win this game, and everyone's like, wait a minute, this defense is top of the NFL. If this defense beats Buffalo and beats Green Bay, or at least shuts down like a lot of Green Bay's offense with TJ Watt, and without TJ Watt is like, well, I don't know, Derek Carr and Joe Burrows are too good. What can we do? Then TJ Watt is a Defensive Player of the Year winner right there. Like, you just need to put some stats together to convince to stay in the conversation, but you've got it. You've already won it. So to me, yeah, He is that player. He is that important to the defense right now. He is that important to this game situation. Whatever Derek Tuzga is, he is not TJ Watt. You cannot go in there with Derek Tuzga. You can't. And Alex Highsmith is still listed as, he's listed as injured. He's limited in practice. TJ Watt has to go for us to have a chance to win this game. And if we do win this game, the story is going to be TJ Watt.
And realistically, the first game and a half when TJ Watt was healthy, the Steelers looked like a much better team. They looked considerably worse the second half against the Raiders. They looked flat out terrible against the Bengals. Guess who wasn't on the field at those times? TJ Watt. That's the difference.
Yeah. Well, how many sacks does TJ Watt have?
3, I think, in those
3 in a game and a half. 3 in a game and a half. Like, come on.
If you want to average it out, he's averaging a sack a half.
Yeah.
1 sack per half of football.
So if he comes out and does something like that again, maybe gets a strip sack and the Steelers, oh, Lord, please, convert it for a touchdown. Like, that swings the game. Like, that's what we need. Like, that's how we win the game. That's what we need to be in this game.
This team kind of reminds me of the 2019 Steelers where Ben Roethlisberger was hurt and the offense couldn't do anything with Rudolph or Hodges. The offense was just terrible. It was hard to watch, and that's what it has been. And that team was reliant on defensive touchdowns, and that won them 2 games, probably a third where they were close to scoring.
No, Michael Beck, I will argue this. I stated that the Steelers defense in 2019 with Minkah Fitzpatrick, the difference in defensive turnovers was 5 games. The difference, that was my argument, was we didn't give up the 18th pick for Minkah Fitzpatrick. We gave up a top 3 pick for Minkah Fitzpatrick because the team on defense, even if they were average, that team was so bad on offense that we would have been a 3-13 team without Minkah Fitzpatrick. So yeah, we're in that category.
So I guess with that said, then we need this defense to start creating a little bit more in terms of turnovers. There's that 1 interception from Terrell Edmonds against the Bengals. Is that key here? Do we need to pick off Aaron Rodgers a couple times? Do we need to force a couple fumbles? Is that necessary to win this game?
I don't care how the turnovers come; they have to come, and also you need points.
So 0
Special
turnovers,
teams, defense, something. You need to get turnovers in field goal range, right? Already in scoring position.
So a big goose egg on the turnover kind of category when the clock hits zeros. Do the Steelers lose that game?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's
absolutely. So far this year, the Packers are 0-1 when they have turnovers and 2-0 when they don't.
That is pretty key right there. Now, we are approaching the end of the show here, so I think it is time for us to give our game predictions as well as our final score predictions. Geoffrey, what are you thinking in this one?
I'm going to go with the Packers. Packers 20. TJ Watt 16.
I see what you did there.
I'm not even calling it. This is the Pittsburgh TJ Watts versus the Green Bay Packers.
That's a pretty bold one. Now, in the history of us doing Know Your Enemy and doing this show, I think I've only picked the Steelers to lose twice maybe. Like, I have been on the Steelers bandwagon a lot of the time. I think that is about to change, especially if they lose this one as ugly as they lost to the Bengals. I just have a hard time picking the Steelers at all. I have a hard time picking the Steelers plus 7.5 points. I have a hard time until this offense can prove anything. I am just not feeling this team at all right now. I'll go Packers 27, Pittsburgh Steelers 13 in a 14-point loss. And maybe some things start to change after losing by a score like that. But I'm a little bit worried. I don't really like where this team is standing right now. But before we call it a show, Mr. Benedict, is there anything you want to plug for the people?
Yeah, I'm going to plug my article that came out today on Ben Roethlisberger, and the one thing he used to do as recently as 2018 when he had a sore arm that he's not doing right now. I put a film room out there on that. Look at that one. That's one of my favorite. That's one of my film rooms I'm the most proud of that I've done. I've got another film room coming out later this week that's just a short one, and it's about, if you saw the Pat Freiermuth touchdown, it's about how Matt Canada set that up, and basically how Matt Canada created a situation where the Steelers could score a touchdown with the offensive line not blocking people, Ben Roethlisberger not being able to throw downfield to people, and receivers not being able to catch the ball, and he still orchestrated a touchdown. Give Matt Canada some love and respect. Look for that film room.
Good stuff. Those are always great articles. So I encourage everyone to check that out. And really, the phrase that we like to say here, and you can join in as I say it, make sure to click over to behindthesteelcurtain.com. It should be your one-stop shop for all things Pittsburgh Steelers.
Pittsburgh Steelers.
There you go. Thank you, Geoffrey. Now, you're going to get everything from the website, from film rooms to breakdowns to grades to commentary. You name it, it is over and Behind the Steel Curtain. Heck, breaking news. We have breaking news stories all the time running on the website, so make sure you're dialed in to behindthesteelcurtain.com. And lastly, the podcast platform has taken off for us. Of course, we have our afternoon shows. So if you're just watching on YouTube and Facebook, you're only getting, about a third of the story right now. We have 25 original titles running on our podcast platform. That could be Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, wherever. Seriously, wherever you get your podcast from, it is available. Just search up behindthesteelcurtain.com. You might even be able to just search up Steelers. I'm pretty sure on most platforms, we're usually number one when you're searching that up. So just make sure you're subscribed, 5 stars, hit the like button. Whatever your platform does, just whatever you can do to help support us. It gives us an opportunity to make some more great content for you. So once again, I want to thank everyone for tuning in tonight, and for my co-host, Geoffrey Benedict. You've been watching Know Your Enemy from BehindTheSteelCurtain.com, and we'll see you guys next week.